Most people in Australia have heard of the Eureka Stockade. It was a bold and bloody rebellion by gold miners in Victoria in 1854, fighting against oppressive government regulations and licence fees. Less well known is that Western Australia nearly experienced its own Eureka Rebellion during the Ivanhoe Venture alluvial dispute of 1898 to 1899. This dramatic and pivotal moment in the state's history saw deep-seated tensions between independent alluvial miners, wealthy mining companies, and the colonial government come to a head. The dispute, rooted in disagreements over access to newly discovered deep leads, sparked mass protests, arrests, and near rebellion, leaving a legacy that shaped the future of the colony. By the late 19th century, the eastern goldfields of Western Australia had seen the easily accessible alluvial gold largely depleted, leaving miners struggling to eke out a living. The discovery of deep alluvial gold deposits, or deep leads, in several locations around Kalgoorlie and Boulder brought renewed hope to miners and prospectors. These ancient river channels, buried beneath layers of sediment, were rich with gold but required more effort to extract compared to the surface deposits. While the deep leads initially seemed to offer salvation to the struggling alluvial miners, they also intensified the divide between small-scale prospectors and the larger, well-financed mining companies that controlled the leases. These companies focused primarily on extracting lode gold, meaning they crushed up gold-laden quartz rather than processing alluvial material, and they often disregarded the rights of alluvial miners, leading to mounting frustrations in the mining community. The Goldfields Act of 1895 was introduced to address the rights of miners in these overlapping claims. It allowed dual title, enabling alluvial miners with a miner's right to extract gold more than 50 feet or 15 metres below the surface, even on leased land controlled by mining companies. However, this provision failed to resolve disputes. Miners sinking shafts to access the deep leads often came into direct conflict with leaseholders who viewed the alluvialists as a nuisance encroaching on their properties. Tensions began to simmer in 1898, when alluvial miners challenged the authority of the larger companies in the Ivanhoe Venture lead. With gold scarcity making life increasingly difficult, alluvial miners saw access to the deep leads as essential for survival. However, their activities were met with resistance from both the companies and the government, which supported the leaseholders in protecting their claims. In an attempt to curb these conflicts, the government introduced the 10-foot regulation, which restricted alluvial miners to digging no deeper than 10 feet or 3 metres. This regulation was seen as an attack on the rights and livelihoods of small-scale miners, and resistance to it grew rapidly. The first signs of unrest appeared in early 1898, when miners openly defied the new regulations by continuing to dig deeper into the leads. The situation escalated when several miners were arrested and imprisoned for violating the rule. This sparked outrage across the goldfields. Miners paraded an effigy of mining minister Edward Whitnum through the streets and burnt it in protest. In March 1898, Premier John Forrest himself was confronted by a mob of several thousand angry diggers in Kalgoorlie. Recognising the growing scale of the unrest, the government quickly rescinded on a 10-foot regulation, hoping to restore order. However, the underlying tensions between miners and authorities remained unresolved. Eventually, the conflict reached a boiling point at the Ivanhoe Venture lead near Kalgoorlie. Independent miners, desperate to access the gold-bearing material or wash in the deep leads, began openly removing it from leases owned by large mining companies. The miners argued that the wash was rightfully theirs under the provisions of the Goldfields Act. The leaseholders, however, maintained that they had exclusive rights to the material, setting the stage for a dramatic confrontation. Defying both the mining companies and government authorities, a group of approximately 500 alluvial miners, using horses and drays, transported the disputed wash to a puddling plant in a nearby suburb of Brown Hill. Mounted police were dispatched to intervene, led by Inspector Newlands, who attempted to de-escalate the situation. He appealed to the miners to cease their activities and respect the law, but his requests were ignored. The miners, supported by a growing crowd of sympathisers, continued loading drays and moving the material throughout the day. When the miners were arrested, the crowd immediately intervened, freeing the detainees and effectively nullifying the police's effort to enforce the law. Adding to the defiant atmosphere, a local publican provided free beer to the miners, turning the protest into a symbol of community solidarity. The Ivanhoe Venture alluvial dispute quickly grew beyond the immediate conflict. News of the miners' actions spread across the region, sparking widespread support from the mining community. Public meetings and rallies were held, drawing massive crowds. One such gathering in Kalgoorlie reportedly attracted up to 8,000 people, a staggering turnout for the time. The government responded by sending reinforcements of armed police from Perth to Kalgoorlie. Leaders of the movement, including Malachi Dwyer, were arrested and held in the heavily guarded Kalgoorlie lockup, which was surrounded by armed police equipped with rifles and bayonets. Dwyer and others were later transported to Fremantle for trial, but their imprisonment only fueled the miners' determination. On October 26, 1899, the miners staged their largest protest yet. Approximately 10,000 people gathered at the Kalgoorlie Recreation Reserve, now thought to be the Sir Richard Moore Sports Centre. The rally featured fiery speeches from civic leaders and prominent figures, most notably FCB Vosper, the first parliamentary representative for North East Coolgardie. Vosper, a charismatic speaker with a history of defying authority, delivered a passionate speech that resonated deeply with the crowd. Known for his striking appearance, he refused to cut his hair after being jailed during a Queensland shearing dispute. Vosper became a symbol of the miners' struggle. His speech is credited with helping to defuse the volatile situation and preventing the demonstration from escalating into outright violence. The growing unrest forced Premier John Forrest to travel to Kalgoorlie to address the crisis personally. Upon his arrival, he was met by an enormous and angry crowd outside the railway station. Realising the seriousness of the situation, the government repealed the 10-foot regulation for good and released the imprisoned miners. Although peace was restored, the damage was done. Disillusioned by the government's actions, many miners left Western Australia for the Klondike goldfields in Canada, depriving the colony of some of its most skilled and experienced prospectors. The Ivanhoe Venture alluvial dispute exposed the deep divisions between miners, corporations, and the government, influencing political attitudes and shaping Western Australia's participation in the Federation referendum. Today, much of the area once worked by alluvial miners has been developed or lies behind fenced-off properties owned by mining companies. While further discovery of the deep leads is unlikely, the risk of subsidence over old workings remains a concern for urban development. And thus, the Ivanhoe Venture alluvial dispute of 1898 to 1899 stands as one of the most significant episodes in Western Australia's history. It was a moment of defiance and resilience when ordinary miners stood against powerful interests to fight for their rights. Although it stopped short of rebellion, the events reshaped the political landscape of the colony, leaving a lasting legacy of resistance and determination. I hope you found this as interesting as I did, and as always, thanks for watching. Before I end this video, I'd like to give a big shout out to my Patreon and YouTube members. Thank you so much to everyone that helps to support this channel.